This tutorial is a continuation from the last tutorial where we looked at form helpers. This time we're going to do some validation on the data that was submitted by our form, and we're going to do an insertion into the database. So what we're going to do first is, because nowhere on our website so far have we used the get array, we're going to go into CodeIgniter's configuration and make sure that the get array is destroyed if the controller ever received it. So go into your config folder and then config and double click there. And then you're going to want to scroll down to this allow get array item of the config array, and I have changed that from true to false. Okay, so we're not allowing the get array. So save that, and then in your controller, if it did receive a get array but your configuration is set not to receive it, it will destroy it upon receiving it. So first thing I'm doing is I'm loading in the helpers that I'm going to use, and I'm loading in the form validation library, and we're also loading in a model because we're going to interact with the database, so we should store all of our database interactions into their own model. And just like with the views, I prepend it with view underscore. The models, I prepend it with model underscore, and that makes the code a lot more legible. At first glance, any programmer can see that model orders.php is a model, and the views are views, and so on. And we can take a quick look at the model here, and we have a function here that we're going to use a little bit later. So the next thing, before I get into this, we should take a look at the database. So if you're following along with me, you can go over to your database, and what you're going to do is create a table called orders. And inside orders, I have 6 different fields. We have an ID, which is an integer and auto increment. I have an email, which is set to a varchar of a reasonable amount of characters. And we have order time, which is set to the date time type. And we have shirt size and stripe choice. Those are both varchars. And I also have free shipping here, and that data type is a boolean. So the type is tinyInt, and it's meant to store a boolean value of 1 or 0. And right now I believe we don't have anything in our database here, so we can run our form and we can do an insertion and just make sure that's working. So I'm going to go over to the form. Let's refresh here, and I'll put my email in there, or else that's not going to validate. And choose some options here, and let's submit. Okay, so we get this order success message upon successful insertion into the database, and we're also just printing out the get array just so we can see a better idea of what's going on. Obviously, if you're in production, you're not going to show this, but because we're just doing a tutorial, we can always show this and just get a better idea of what was in the post array. So we can go back over to the database now, and let's refresh orders, and we can see we have our insertion right here. So because the ID is unique, this is always increasing. It's at 24 already because I've done a bunch of insertions already. I have my email here, and then the date time right there, and we have the shirt size, and then the stripe choice right here. Right now this is a string of black, red, and blue. So originally this was an array, but I imploded the array and converted this to a string. So we're just storing it in the database like this right now. And then free shipping is set to true right there. So obviously if you're doing a real e-commerce website or a real order taking website, I mean, things would be a lot better than this. But this is just a simple example so we can see how CodeIgniter works. Let's go back to the controller, and what I'm doing here is we have these form validation rules. So we're setting up all these rules right here, and they are going to get checked one by one. We'll start with this email one right here, and so we have the name of our input there, which was email, and this is the human readable value. We've covered this stuff before, so if you didn't see the earlier tutorial on forms. Check that out where I talked more about this one. And here we have all of the validation that we want to put it through. So these are all basically different functions built into CodeIgniter, and we can run these checks or do different things to the so we had a post array coming here, and the post array, these are the different elements of the post array, and the email one, we are running all these functions on it. Some of these functions will do checks to see if the data is as we want it or not, and other ones will they'll perform some action on the data, like this trim one, which will just do a simple trim function on it. So let's go to the documentation for this, and let's go to, let's see here. Let's go down to the bottom, and I have this valid email one right here. So with a valid email, it's going to return false if the form element does not contain a valid email address. So this is really handy for us because CodeIgniter is, definitely doing their own regular expression test on this element, and those are really difficult to write. But all we need to do is put in this valid email here as one of the items inside the pipes, and it's going to check if that's a valid email. And if it's not a valid email, this whole thing is going to return false, and then this is also going to return false too. So all of these checks need to return true in order for this to return true. And if one of them is false, then this is false, and then we're just showing the form again. Okay, and the person's going to have to do it over again, and they're going to see the errors, because in our form helper, the first thing we had was this echo validation errors. So in order to have a successful insertion in the database, all of these need to check out, and this needs to validate to true, and then we can do our stuff in the database. I don't think I'm going to cover all of the different checks we can do on our data. If you go to this page in CodeIgniter, the form validation page, in their documentation, and you scroll down to the bottom, you can see all of the different rules that you can put between those pipe characters. Valid email, checking if they're numbers, checking if they're letters, checking the length of the thing, and all sorts of things like that. Checking if something is a match to a certain string, and I think we do that in this one. So definitely spend some time on this form validation page of CodeIgniter, and you will save yourself a lot of time in the long run. So let's just keep going down here. Let's see if there's anything else interesting. Because this was something where people type something in, we have XSS clean here to make sure there's no cross-site scripting attacks on us. We're trimming the email just in case there's any white space. Checking if it's a valid email. If all of this is okay, this is return true, and then we're going to go down to the next one. With shirt size, it's required, and it should only be letters. Of course, it will only be letters because if we go over to our view here, right, these are only letters. So if it got anything other than letters, then we know something's wrong. So I just put the alpha right there, and the next one is set rules for the stripe choice. Of course, this is an array, and that's just required. Okay, they have to choose what stripes they want on their shirt. And for the terms and conditions here, this one I created my own callback function. So I'm doing my own check because I couldn't find this this one inside CodeIgniter, so we just make it ourselves. So what we do here is we put in the name of the input, which was terms, and then the human readable value, and then we have this accept terms is a function that I'm going to create, and in front of that we put callback underscore, and that lets CodeIgniter know that we are doing our own check on this, and it should check for this accept terms function and find out what's going on there. So if I scroll down in this, we can see this accept terms function. Now don't put this function inside this function. It should be in the same controller, but it's its own function. And you know, give the function a good name. And this first parameter here, it's going to take one parameter, and the parameter that's getting passed in is this terms right here. Okay, so it knows which element of the post array it's working on. So if the value of that terms is equal to accept, then we're returning true, or else we're returning false. So if this returns true, then this is going to return true, and if all of them return true, of course this run method also returns true. And there's one more thing we need to do for this. So we must put this right here exactly like that, and our function here, which is returning true or false. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to go into the system folder. So we're going to go down to the system folder here. So system, and then you're going to go to language, and then English, and then open up the form validation lang.php file. And here we have all of CodeIgniter's native checks that it's doing. And what I did was I added my own at the bottom, which is accept terms. Okay, so here we're going to put the error message that we're going to output if the person didn't check that box that agreed to our terms and conditions. And we just have a string right there. So when we can test this, if we go back to the form, and we'll put a valid email in here, and then we are going to uncheck this. We can check to sign our life away. That's fine. And we'll click submit. And it says you must accept the terms and conditions to proceed. So what it did was it did my own custom callback function here. It did my function, and then because this didn't check out, it returned false. So now it's returning my own custom error message that I put in here. And let's go back to the controller. So if all of these check out, then this isn't going to be false. So this is if something wasn't right, it's false. Then we're loading up the view again, and we're passing in the data. And but right now, let's assume all of these things are good. So we're going to skip over this one, and we're going to go to this else statement right here. And the first thing we're doing in the else statement is we're creating this order array, and that's set to an associative array of all of the things that we want to put into our database. Okay, so we have ID. I just set this to null because when this gets inserted, you know, that first field is it's going to be an integer. It's going to be auto increment. Just put null there, and that works fine. And we have now we're going to get the information from the post array. So CodeIgniter has its own function, which is part of the input class, and we can check that out. So let's just duplicate this and go to the top, and we're going to go to the input class here. And if we scroll down here, we can see the usual way people will do in procedural PHP, do this kind of stuff. But with CodeIgniter, you just need to go this, and then input, and then post, and then the element of the post array that you're referring to, and we can store that in a variable. So check out this page if you want to know the details of that. And so what I'm doing is I'm just getting that, and then I'm storing it. Well, here's the key of our array, and we're storing that there. And we're just returning a string here anyways. And the order time, we're getting the time, the shirt size. And for this stripe choice, I was running the implode function on this one right here, and it wasn't working. And I think the reason it wasn't working was because this is a native PHP function implode, which the first one it takes, how are we going to separate the values of the array, and the second one is supposed to take an array, but I don't think this is an array. I think this is an object. So I was getting an error. So what I did was, in the second parameter, I just did a regular post, and this is an element of the array, and that worked fine. And then free shipping is set to that, whether that's 1 or 0. And the next thing we're doing is we're doing this. So we've already loaded in our model, this model orders, and then we're calling the method of our model orders class that I created. So insert order, and then we're passing in the order array. So all of this is going to get sent to the model and run this function, and then whatever is returned from this is going to get stored in our insert order variable right here. So let's go over to the model, and here we have our insert order function. So it takes an array, and the following will return true if it's a successful insert. And this function is going to return. So right now we're writing to the database, and when we do writes on the database, it's going to return true or false based on whether we had a successful insertion or not. Whereas when we do reads from the database, we get an object returned to us in CodeIgniter. So this is going to return true if it works, and we're using this insert string function here. So what this insert string is going to do is it's going to create some SQL for us. And I found this function really handy, and I really liked it. So let's take a look at it in this one. And so right here we have this DB, and then we're using CodeIgniter's insert string method. And we're passing in, the first thing is the name of the table, and the second thing is the array of values that we're passing in. So just by doing this right here, we are going to create all this right here, the insert statement, insert all these values like that, and I stored that in a variable called SQL because that's what it is. And then we have this DB and then the query function. We looked at this before, and then we're passing in the SQL, and then we're storing this to the query. So if this query, if this returns true, if this does it, I think I might have said something wrong before, but if this query, successfully does its thing, then true is going to get returned to this query. Okay, so but for this insert order, that's our own function. So we're going to return whatever we want from this. This is our own function. So if this is successful, this will be true, and then if this is true, then our whole function is going to return true. So if the query is true, then our whole function is going to return true, or else we're doing this. And here I have the last query function. So if something was wrong, I'm just I'm getting what was the SQL, because I want to know what it is. I'm storing that in here, and then I'm returning it so that I can see why it didn't work. I can take a look at the SQL and see why that didn't work. So in this case, we tested this already, and everything was inserted fine. So let's go back to home here, and let's see, where are we now? Right, so these were all true. Okay, so we were able to do the insert to the database, and so right now we've done this already, and we're passing in. There's no title there. Page header is just set to order success to let the people know they were successful, and then we're loading in the view. Okay, so and that view is, of course, when we fill out the form. Okay, and submit. Everything worked, so they're getting sent to this view right here. There's definitely much more to forms than we were able to talk about in this tutorial. If you want to find out more, I suggest you go to CodeIgniter's website and read up on everything on the form validation page, and also the query helper functions and everything that relates to database in CodeIgniter, and also check out the input class and also the form helper class if you've forgotten any of those functions. And after you do that, I think you'll have a much better idea of how CodeIgniter can help you with forms on your website. Thanks for watching.